Hello everyone, welcome to my first ever YouTube tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at Pro Tools HD automation controls, and this tutorial is split into two parts. This one is about manual write, write on stop, auto join and auto match, and the next one is going to be about preview and capture. Anyways, let's get it going.
3 hours later.
Alright, so we're going to begin by opening the automation window from Window, Automation. If you're using the standard version of Pro Tools, you're definitely familiar with this top section right here. Probably not with Object and Buzz automation. What this is referring to is object-based automation for Dolby Atmos. I unfortunately don't have access to Dolby Atmos, so I'm just going to be focusing this tutorial on the bottom section right here. So just before we begin, I'm just going to open a fader and choose the automation mode to latch. And now we are good to go. So as you probably know, when you start playing back a file, you can start automating by just moving the faders up and down, right? And then when you hit stop, automation has been written to that section. But what if we begin writing automation and we decide that we want to write this specific value to the end of the session? Well, you simply come here to manual write, click on this button, and then Pro Tools is going to show you that automation is going to be written until the end of the session. Hit stop, OK, and there you have it. You can also do that to the beginning of the session. So let's play back, automate a little bit, click this button, and now Pro Tools is going to show us that automation is going to be written until the beginning of the session. Hit stop, OK, and there you have it. Now let's say that you want to write automation for the entire session. There's two ways you can do that. The first, you can come here to the trim tool and just simply trim the volume down or up. But what if we already began automating and we choose a value that we like, and we want now this value to be automated to the entire session? Well, you can simply come here to manual write and click this button, and now automation is going to be written to the entire session. Of course, a warning is going to pop up and say that automation has been written across the entire timeline for one or more parameters. That's exactly what we want. Hit OK, and there you go. Now, what are those remaining buttons here doing? They write automation to the next and the previous breakpoints. So for example, if I mark one breakpoint right here and I start automating right here, let's say I choose -15, and I want now that this value be automated until here, I simply click this button, and then Pro Tools is going to tell me that automation is going to be written until here. Hit stop, all good. Of course, you can do that to the previous point as well. So we can just mark a point here. However, notice what Pro Tools is going to do when I start automating from here and then I choose to automate to the previous breakpoint. And then you hit this button right here. What is going on? I told Pro Tools to automate until this breakpoint, but it's only automating until here. Well, that's because Pro Tools recognizes any beginning of automation as a breakpoint. So the previous breakpoint, the initial breakpoint, would then be this one. So when I press stop, hit OK, automation has been written to this section. So that's always something to be aware of, so you don't get confused in your projects. So the next control is write on stop. Now write on stop does exactly the same thing as manual write, although it only writes automation when you stop playback. So for example, if I have a breakpoint right here, and I want to write automation to the next breakpoint using write on stop, I hit play, I start automating, come here, write on stop. Notice how now it's lit red. So when you stop, automation's immediately going to be written until this breakpoint. So it's essentially the same thing as manual write, but only when you stop playback. So next is auto join. Let's turn this on. So for example, if I play back right here and I start automating, and then after a while I stop, you're going to notice that Pro Tools now has this red line across your audio file. That's auto join telling you that this is where you stopped automating, right? So let's say that if I just play back from here without touching the faders, if I just play back, once it hits that line, it's gonna resume the automation I was once doing. So it can be very useful, but it also can be very dangerous. Let's say that you go out for a coffee break and then you come back, you completely forget you had auto join turned on, and then you play back and you suddenly changed all of the automation that you didn't want to change in a further section of the file, right? So it can be very dangerous. Always be careful of this. So whenever you can, turn it off just for safety. Next, let's go to auto match. Now, auto match is a very interesting tool because it's very similar to what touch mode does with automation. So for example, if I play back here, then I automate a little bit. So what auto match allows me to do is to go back to the original state without having to pause or stop the playback. It's very similar to what touch does, right? So you click auto match and bam, now you're reading this volume level right here. And it works just as an automation stop. However, something that you can do to change how much time does it take for you to auto match a file, you come here to Pro Tools, Preferences, then right here in Mixing, auto match time, you can choose, I like to choose 500 milliseconds. I think that's a reasonable time. Hit OK. And now when you start automating again and you choose auto match, look at how it's going to take a while to go back to the original state. That's 500 milliseconds right there.
Epilogue.
And there you have it. I hope this tutorial was informative and helpful to you. If you have any further questions, please let me know down in the comments. Other than that, I wish you a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next one. See ya!